So let's continue. So these are the topics I'm going to cover today. So I'm going to cover JavaScript number type, integer precision, basic mathematical operators, number properties and methods, booleans, conditional statements like if and else statement. Then we have switch statements, ternary operator. Then we have loops. So I'll talk about for, while, and do while loops and their differences. So JavaScript number data type. So JavaScript has a single numeric data type called the number data type. So from if you've had any experience with other languages, you find out that they have um, data types like integer, boolean, float, sorry, integer, float, some have big int and the rest. But on JavaScript, you just have a single numeric data type, and that data type is called number. So whether your the digit you have has a decimal point or not, it is regarded in JavaScript as a number. So then let's continue. This data type accommodates integers, decimal numbers, also called floating point numbers, as well as numbers written with scientific notations. And this can all be either positive or negative numbers. So numbers with negative signs before them are also regarded as numbers in JavaScript. Yeah. So example of JavaScript number type is like this var I is equals to 85. So this is an integer type, but it's still regarded as a number in JavaScript. Then this one, 85.238. So this is still a number type, but in some other languages, this would be called a floating point a floating point integer, a floating point data type. But here it's still regarded as a number. Then here we have e raised to the like we have 85238 e1. So this is a floating point number with a scientific notation. Then if you run this on your console, what you should see is 85.238. But it's still the same thing as saying 8.5238 times 10. So that's the same thing. So this number represents the number of zeros you're adding. So having e2 here is the same thing as saying this number times 100. So it having like e3 would also represent maybe times 1000. So I hope you're following up to this point. So let's talk about JavaScript integer precision. So integer numbers that's without a period or exponential notation are accurate up to 15 digits. So this is 15 digits. It would be accurate. It would if you say let x equals to this, for example, it will output the same number. But if you have like 99999 into like 16 places, it will just round it up to this figure. So this would be the output of like putting like saying x equals to this and then trying to print x again. So it's going to result in this number. So it would try to round it up because in JavaScript integers accuracy is 15 digits. So anything above 15 digits, it's going to round it up. So we have basic math operator. So we have addition, subtraction, multiplication. So exponentiation, like two, this is like saying 2 raised to the power of 3. So which is 8. Then we have division. So then we have modulus. So 5 modulus 2 is 1. So this is like saying um 5 divided by 2 is 2 remainder 1. So the remainder is what you're actually looking at here. So we have increments, for example, x, and you have x plus plus. This is the same. This is almost like saying add. In fact, it's the same thing as saying add 1 to x and then store that value as x. So the same thing as decrements, reduce x by 1 okay, reduce y by 1 and store the value. So I hope you guys are following. Okay. Hello, I hope you guys are following. Okay, all right. So let's continue. So we would also code today. So we have a lot of things to write. We'll test out a lot of things, and so let's continue. If you add a number and a string, the result will be a string concatenation. So concatenation is the act of adding two strings together. So if you try to add, or maybe a string and a number together. So if you add a string, if you add x as a number to y as being a string, so so if you try adding them, what you will get as your output will be like concatenating the both of them. So this would be, since this is 10 and this is 20, to be 10 20, because x is 10 and y is 20. So instead of you having 30 as what is expected, you have 20, 10 20, 1020, sorry. So the reason that is happening is because 20 itself is an integer, is a string, not an integer. But meanwhile, 10 here, which is x, is an integer. So trying to add these two would give you this result. So you can only add two numbers. You can't add a number and a string, or a string and a string, and it would give you a number. No, so that doesn't work. So then, yeah, I said JavaScript sees y as a number. So it sees this y, the value of this y, as a number, while JavaScript sees this sees z as a string because of this double quotes here, or single quotes here. So with that said, now this is one thing about JavaScript. JavaScript has this weird part of it where, since you're doing arithmetic, apart from adding, if you're doing any other thing like division, multiplication, or subtraction, your the results will come out well, like what you would expect. So this would give you the correct answer. This would give you the correct answer. This would give you the correct answer. So I guess while we are doing this, while we are writing all this, I guess we should also be running it. So let me go to repair.it fast, and then we'll run one or two things there. So I hope you guys are following up to this point. So I remember in our last class we talked more about strings and how they are being used. So let me continue. So uh, so let me just prepare that so we could run some code. So let A equals to 100, let B equals to 10, and then when I say let C equals A plus B, then we console.log C, and if we run this, what we should actually see, we see 100, we see 110 being put together. But if we did something like divide, try to divide it, it will give us 10 as a number itself. And even if we subtract, to give us the same, to give us the correct answer. And if we try to multiply, it would also give us the same answer, give us a correct answer. But when we use plus and then JavaScript sees a string in one of these two values, it is going to assume that you are trying to concatenate, not add both of them. So that's why trying to do this would give you this answer. But if you removed the quotes, if you remove the quotes, for example, you remove the quotes here and you run it, it will now give you the correct answer. So that's one weird part of JavaScript. So this is the reason why that happens. So JavaScript will try to convert the strings to number in this numeric operation. So before trying to divide these two, it will try to convert these two to numbers before trying to divide it. The same thing with this, the same thing with this. But when you're trying to add two strings together, JavaScript sees the string and it doesn't try to convert them back to integers because it assumes you're concatenating them. So I hope you guys understand up to that point. Hello? Hello, are you
Yes,
guys
we
there?
understand.
Okay. So let's continue. So then we have this number property called NaN. So NaN stands for not a number. So not a number is a reserved word indicating that a number is not a legal number. So trying to do arithmetic with numeric strings will result in a not a number property. So this is like saying if you try to divide an a number by string, for example, what you will get back is this not a number property to tell you that the result of what you're trying to divide is not going to be a number. So if we try that, if we say 100 divided by hello, for example, if we do that, we get not a number here. So this is trying to tell you that the result of doing this kind of arithmetic operation is going to give you not it's not going to give you a number, it's going to give you something else that is not a number. So this is important because um, if you try to um, if you're trying to work with strings and numbers and you accidentally do this kind of a thing and you see NaN, this give you should tell you that you're trying to divide a number or you're trying to do an arithmetic operation between a number and a string. I guess if I try this too, it should definitely give me not a number. It still gives me not a number. So if you try to do arithmetic with two things, with a number and a string, then the result is going to always be not a number. So let's continue from there. I hope you guys are following. So then we talked about this before. So then this how, okay, I just explained this. So trying to divide 100 by Apple is going to give you an output of not a number. So yeah, then uh you find out that type of NaN is a number. So if you try to check the type of NaN, it tells you that NaN is it's a number property, but it's not a number itself. So then we talk a bit about JavaScript JavaScript number properties and methods. So I didn't put number here. So these are JavaScript number properties and their methods. So we talk about max value, mean value, positive infinity, and negative infinity. So let's talk about max value. So max value is the largest number possible that JavaScript as a language can actually work with. While mean value is the smallest number JavaScript can work with comfortably. Then when you talk about positive infinity, you're talking about dividing a number by zero in JavaScript. Then negative infinity is dividing a negative number by zero. So let me show you how that works. So if I did something like, if I said number dot max max value, so that is the largest amount of number JavaScript can work with. So that's 1.7976 whatever. So it's like saying times 10 raised to the power of 308. So that's the largest amount of number JavaScript can work with. Then if we check the mean value JavaScript can work with, if I do mean now, see that that's the lowest number JavaScript can work with. This is like saying 5 times 10 raised to the power of minus 2324. So that's the smallest amount of number, or the smallest kind of number JavaScript can work with. Then if you want to get an infinity, uh, then maybe you could do this. Let's say 55 divided by 0 will give you an infinity. And if you set minus 55 divided by 0, that will give you a negative infinity. So those are some few JavaScript number methods you can work with, or number properties you can work with. So let's talk about their methods now. So if you have any question, you can ask it on the chat section. I'm going to check it from time to time and then answer any question that you ask. So let's talk about strings. Okay, let's talk about the method to string. So this method to string is used to convert a number to string. So if I did something like, let's say 55, and I want to convert that 55 to string, I would say 55 dot to string. Now, what I'm given out is, I'm given 55 now as a number, sorry, as a string, not a number. So I put 55 in here as a number and I convert it to string. So then the result of doing that would be 55. So if I want to actually write that here, I would say let a equals, or let number 55 equals to 55. Then I could say let string 55 equals to then we now say number 55 dot to string. Then we now console.log. First, I would like to console.log number 55. And I would like to console.log string 55 here. So if I run that, of course, now this first 55 is a number, and then this second one is a string. If we want to confirm that, we can console, we can do this. We can say type of this, and then we say type of. So I want to find out their types. So the first one, this 55 is a number, and the second 55 is a string. So you can use to string to convert from a number to string, and then you save that value, and then you can now output it. So let's continue. Then you can use value of to return a particular number or set of numbers as a number after evaluating them. So if I say let's say 25 plus, let's say 10, for example, and I say dot value of, still going to give me 35. But a better thing to do, just write maybe 25 plus 10 plus 10, finish. That will still give you 35. Then these other three, um, these other three methods are used um, to convert strings to either number or integer or float. So this number converts to whatever. If you feed it with a string that maybe the value is kind of like a float, it's going to convert it to float. If it's a whole number inside that string, then it's going to convert it to a number, like an integer, like that. So let me show you what I mean. If we did something like, if we use number and we said we gave it 55, for example, and we said number 55, convert it to number 55. Remember, it's a string we passed in here. We passed in a string here, and then we are getting back a number. But if we do number, let's say 3.142, for example, it still gives us back, it gives us back the number as it is. Now, this is kind of in as a floating point. This is kind of a floating point number, something like that. But it's giving us back, it's not trying to remove this decimal place, this other digits after the decimal. It gives it to us as it is. But if we say um it's if we said pass int, for example, if we said pass int and then we now said set 3.142, it's going to give us only the part with the whole number. So this could be useful if you're working with let's say money on back end, for example, and you don't want to include the kobo part. You know, if we say I'm paying you 100.25 naira, it means I'm paying you 100 naira and 25 kobo. So if you want to remove that 25 kobo part, you can use pass int to actually remove the decimal parts, which is kind of like the kobo part if you're working with money on your back end, for example. But if we do pass float, if we did pass float, and then we now put in here 3.142, to give us back our float as 3.142. It won't remove the decimal points or the values after the decimal points. So I hope you guys are following. Is there anybody that is not following? Hello? Okay, someone says I should come again. Okay, so when you're talking about numbers, of course, a number could either be as an integer, like a full number with like a number without any decimal points. In fact, let's start like this. What's the difference between an integer and a float? So anybody knows what's the difference between an integer and a float, or a floating point number? I'm listening. So just write, if you know the difference, write it on your comments and um on your chat and then post it. So I'm going to look. So what's the difference between an integer and a float? Yes, an integer is a whole number. Okay. So then what about a float? Yeah, a float is a decimal number, or a number with a decimal point. So a number like, okay, okay. So someone says he doesn't understand the methods, so I should explain more. Okay, so um an integer is a whole number. So let's say 25, 35, 100, 5,000, 2 million, 8 million. All those are integers. They are whole numbers. Now, floating point numbers are numbers that has decimal points in them, like 3.142, 5.06, 8.7, 9.2. All those are actually floating point numbers. So JavaScript treats integers and floating points as just numbers. It doesn't separate them from each other. So they are basically the same thing. Integers, floats. JavaScript treats both of them as numbers. So when once you say let a equals 5, JavaScript just decides that that number is an integer. It doesn't it doesn't Okay, then if you say let b, for example, equal to 555.23, JavaScript just takes that, and since there's a decimal point there, JavaScript decides that okay, that number should be a floating point number, not an integer. So if you want to convert, if you want to convert now, another thing is, most time when you're working with data, data will come. When I say data, I mean like data types like this, like numbers, for example, or strings, for example. Those things will come as strings. So for example, this 55 can come from, if as a backend developer, 55 can come from front end as a string for you to convert it to an integer and store or something like that. So you should be flexible with knowing how to convert an integer to a string to an integer, and the rest. You should be flexible with converting those things. Shouldn't be difficult for you. So this these methods actually help you convert those. If you notice, I am passing strings into those methods. I'm passing strings into these methods, and they are actually converting them to numbers for me. So if I do type of, I now say number 55, it tells me it's a number, because after passing this 55 here, this number itself converts 55 from being a string to being a number, and then I now check that number using this type of, so that gives me a number. So these are different methods you can use to convert strings into numbers. So but if we try to convert this, for example, hello, since hello is not a string, it can't convert it to number. So it tells you that what this NaN is like telling you, what you're trying to convert is not a number, so we can't convert it for you. So I hope you guys follow up to that point. So do you understand the point I am now? Are we on the same page? Okay, so Chisom, have I been able to answer your question? Hello, Chisom. Okay, so let me continue with what I'm doing. So now I said you convert you use these strings to convert numbers, sorry, to convert integers back to numbers. So if we did something like number, and then we pass a string into this number, even if we passed a number, it's not going to, it's not, there's no conversion here because I just passed in a number. But as soon as I put this um quotation marks here, this is actually a string in JavaScript. JavaScript now takes this as a string, and then JavaScript converts it automatically to a number to us. So this is actually a number. So I don't know if I should write it here. Let's a equals to, let me put 55 for example. And say let's b equals to number, and we now say 55. So if I check the type of the type of A will give me a string, while the type of B will give me a number. So if I said console.log, then we now say type of A, then type of B. We see that A itself is a string, which is this A, while this B is a number. For more clarity, let me do this. A is a, and do this, or if I run this, you see that variable A is a string. Then we find out that variable B is a number. So I hope this is clear too. In fact, I put 55 here. If I did that, it will still give us the same thing. So we see that A itself is a string. While when we now add number to this and then we pass in A, which is a string, it now converts A to a number to us. So B itself is not a string anymore. It's a number. I don't know if you guys are like following. Are you guys following? Hello. So uh so this is like saying A is equals to 55. Then help me convert A from string 55 to number 55 and then save that number 55 as variable B. That is all what is happening here. So this A takes in a string which is 55, string 55, and converts it to a number. So this now becomes number 55, and then we save that number 55 as B. So that's why when we now check what type of what like this B is what type. So B is now a number, but A is a string. So now if we try to convert 55 point maybe 113, for example, if we try to convert this, it will still give us the same thing. It will still tell us that this A is a string while B is a number. So let me run it for you to see. It definitely gives us the same thing. But if I remove this and I output A, or let me remove all this. So if you notice, this first one is printed in white. This means this particular one, this first one, which is A, is a string. But this one is printed in kind of like a yellow color. This is to tell you that this has been this is a number. So if you want to convert in JavaScript, if you want to convert something, if you want to convert a string that has numbers in it, like that has numbers in it. If you want to convert that string into a number, maybe a string that has integers in it or floats in it, you want to convert it to a number so that you can't use this A like this to do mathematical operations, especially adding. If I say if I say if I say A plus maybe 20, for example, and I run it, you'll see you'll see 55.11320. I mean 55.11320. It's not adding it, but since I've converted this to a number, since I've now converted a to a number and I'm saving it as variable b, if I say b plus 20, I run it now, I would see the correct. So you've seen it's now adding it. So 55 plus 2 is now 75. So 55 plus 20 is now 75.113. So this is actually doing the arithmetic operation. So is that clear? I hope. Okay. So Code Smiles says he or she is following. Okay. So let me continue now. Number converts your string to a number irrespective of whether it's an integer or is a float. It's going to convert it accordingly. You understand? It's going to convert it accordingly. It's if it's like now um we are passing, this is a float, but since it's inside um is inside quotation marks, so it is treated as a string, but we've converted it back to a number, and then you can now use it to do whatever I want to do, to add, to subtract, to do whatever I want to do. So if we did something like this, if we said pass int instead of float, it is going to convert 55.13 into a whole number. So 55.13 is the same thing as saying, 55.113 is the same thing as saying 55. So if we run that, for example, what do we get as our final answer? We get 75 because we said convert this it converts this to a number. Then since we want it to be an integer, it now removes the decimal part. It removes the decimal part from that number and then gives us that number as an integer. So that's why we're having 75 here, not 75 point something something something. So I hope you guys follow up to that point. So Chisom, is it getting clear to you? Is Chisom there? Okay, so Chisom now understands it. So first we if you use number, it will just convert it like that, and then you can use the number it has been converted as it is. With if it has a decimal point, it will convert it and preserve the decimal point if you were using number here. But since we are using int, it converts it to an int. Since integers don't have this part, so integers don't have these points, one something something something. So that's why you have it's printing first. This b, the value of this b is 55. Then since you're adding 20, that is why you're seeing 75 here. So if I remove this, if I remove that 20 on both and I run this code, you're going to see that it's going to be 55. So then if we try to check their types, if we now say type of A and then type of B, you run it now. See that A is a string while B is a number. Yeah, so hope you guys are following. You guys are following. So let's continue. So now, if you want to work with floating point numbers, let's say um you want to work with floating point numbers, like this particular number is a floating point number now, and you want to convert it, you want to just be strict on converting to float. For example, you just use float or pass float. So this float would pay attention to anything that has decimal points. So if it has decimal points, it's going to convert it. I guess if you pass in a whole number, it's still going to output a whole number here as you've converted it to float. If you pass a whole number to float, it will still give you back a whole number. But basically, if you find this really confusing, just go on with using number simply, because number would always convert, except number will always give you back a number. It's exactly what you put in. If you put in a decimal point, it's going to give you plus that decimal point. But if you want to convert decimal point numbers, for example, to whole numbers, that's when you use pass int. I hope it's getting clear. So now this pass int has converted a from being a string and being a being a string and being a decimal number to being a number and an integer in that case. So it converts it from just being 55.55 to being 55. So this 55, this part without this dot here, without this dot 55 or dot 555, this 55 here is the whole number part, while this part is like the fractional part. So having this whole number here you're seeing is a floating point number, but having a number without that dot, this 55 now becomes an integer. But JavaScript treats all of them, whether they have point or not, it treats all of them as numbers. I hope it's not confusing you guys again. No? So if you're not still clear, you can ask questions. Is everybody following now? Okay. Okay. So let's continue. So let's continue. So now, apart from these properties and methods that I've explained, there are still more like others. There are a lot of them still for number data type. There are more of them. There are a lot of them. So I would encourage you to find out how others work. So because I won't want to spoon feed you, like show you everything at once. You also need to research on your own and like discover a lot of things. So let's continue. So let's talk about Booleans. So JavaScript Boolean data type. So Boolean data type is a data type that returns either of two values. That is, it returns a true or a false. Then you use Boolean function in JavaScript. Boolean function returns Boolean value as or Boolean value of variables. It can also be it can also be used to find Boolean results of a condition or an expression. So this Boolean function is used if you want to check um, if a condition is true or if a statement is true or false. So uh, okay, so let's check this. So this is how you use that Boolean statement. So we is like saying you're asking, is 5 greater than 2? So that's true. So is 5 not equal to 2? Yes, that's true. 5 is not equal to 2. Is 5 less than 2? That's false. 5 is not less than 2. Is 5 equal to 2? That's false. 5 is not equal to 2. Now say, is 5 less than or equal to 5? So is 5 less than or equal to 5? Let me check that. I guess it's 5 less than or equal to 5. Sorry, that's a true. Sorry, this is a true, not a false. So is 5 less than or equal to 5? So 5 is not less than 5, but 5 is equals to 5. So this is true. Then we now check. This is now where I guess a lot of people get it confused. So we said, is 5 equals to 5? And we have true here, but we now check, is integer 5 equal to string 5? So so we have a false here. So I'm going to explain why this is happening, why these two are giving different answers. So if you notice, this is saying, is 5 equals to 5? So what happens here is 5, this 5 is converted to a string, or they are converted to the same data type. Is it that this 5 will be converted to a string, or this 5 will be converted to an integer, and then their values will be compared, and then if the values are the same, then this will appear true. But meanwhile, this one compares them like that, compares this integer to this to the, or this number, it compares this number to this string. So since this is a string, I'm sorry, this is a number and this is a string, then it means they are not equal. So we are going to do more of that very soon. So yeah, the difference between, so this one with double equal sign means is equal to, while this one means is equivalent to. So we see that equal to is used to compare if the value of two values are equal after the variables are converted to the same data type. But we see that having equivalent to is used to compare if two values, or if the value of two variables are equal without converting them to the same data type. So anytime you're comparing values in JavaScript first, if there are two, if there are two different data types, JavaScript tries to convert the the two data types to match each other before trying to compare them. If you're using this equal to sign, but if you're using equivalent to, JavaScript doesn't convert them to the same data type. JavaScript just checks if the two of them are the same. So I guess you guys follow up to that extent. So let's continue. Oh, so okay, so let's just play around with this a bit. So if we do Boolean is one less than one. Yeah, false. So 1 is not less than 1, 1 is equal to 1. If we do is 1 equal to 1, we is 1 equal to 1, we see it through there. Even if we did is 1 equivalent to 1, excuse me, sorry, we will still see a true. If we did is integer 1 equal to string 1, we see true. But if we check if it's equivalent to, we see false, because they are not of the same data type. Then there's this other one, I guess. We say if 2 is equals to 1 plus 1, we see that that is true. But if we try to do this, okay, we also see that that is true, that 2 is the same as having 1 plus 1. So we can check a lot of things. Is 2 greater than 2? Is 2 greater than 1 plus 1? False. Is 2 greater than or equals to 1 plus 1? So 2 is not greater than 1 plus 1. 1 plus 1 is still 2. So 2 is not greater than 2, but 2 is equal to 2. So these are like ways you can check to see if something is true. So part of how this Boolean is being used on backend is if you want to check if someone's email is verified, for example. So you can say is email verified equals to true, for example, or is login equals to true if you want to find out if someone is logging, or all those kind of things, or if is this person an admin. So if it returns true, it means okay, yes, this person is an admin. If it returns false, then it means the person is not an admin. Maybe the person is just an ordinary user on your website. So these are like simple use cases you can play around with. So I hope you guys are following. You guys are following. You guys are following. Is there anybody that is not following? Is there anybody that is not following?
We are following, I guess.
You say?
I said we are all following.
Okay. He says, followers. Followers. Okay. I guess you're trying to say you're following. So yeah. Okay. So I'm glad everybody's following. So that means we can continue. So the reason why you would want to compare two values to see if they are true is, your code should be able to be smart enough to take decisions when a condition is met. So you can say if this happens, if this is true, then this line of code should run. Or if this is false, then another line of code should run. So it's just like sending, maybe you guys have junior brothers or junior sisters at home. You say you give him money and say go to this shop. If they don't have tomato, onion and flavor, onion and pepper flavor, I'll be onion and pepper tomatoes. Then if they have another tomatoes, buy. Or if they have no Maggi, uh buy. Else if they don't have, move to another shop. So if you know how to compare booleans very well to get what you want, like to get the correct answer to what you want, then you'll be able to like do a lot of things. So let's continue. Okay, so let's continue. So with that being said, we understand how booleans work and how to compare values. Now there's this other thing I didn't mention. You can extend you can make your comparing. You can compare stuff and make it like bigger. You know this stuff we did in secondary school where we did truth table, that if this and this is true, then the value should be true. Else, if this and this is false, the value will be false. If anyone is false, then the value should be false. Then we now have or we now say if um two things are true, then the value should be true. If one of the two is true, then the value should still be true. You guys remember something like that? With if you remember like that kind of a thing you did in secondary school, truth table. So you can also do that here in JavaScript. So who remembers truth table? So who remembers truth table? Okay. So you say you remember truth table. So you can actually do that kind of a thing here. So you can say if true. Now let's do and. So if you want to say if something is true and another thing is true, you can say and true. So it gives you a true. So remember, our truth table says the both input has to be true for the output to be true. Else, if one input is false, then the output will be false. So we only have a true if the two inputs are true. So if we do something like false here, we'll have false. If we did if we removed this one and we made it false, have a false. So the only way we can have true if we are using this and is if these two inputs are true. That's the only way we can have a true. So if we wanted to do something like or, so we'll do this. If you want to check for, like, you want to do that truth table stuff using or, you then use this pipe symbol. So that pipe symbol is okay, this statement goes like this. If we are doing an or statement, we now say if any input is true, then the value of the output should be true. So the only way we can get false if we are doing or is if the two values or if the two inputs are false. That's when we can have false. So if we did this, we'll have true. If we change this to true, we still have true. If we change this to false, we'll still have true. But if we change everything to false, that's when we'll now have false. So I hope you guys understand what I'm doing so far. Are you guys following? Okay. Are you guys following? No, nobody is saying anything. Okay, Chisom says yes.
We are following.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, cool. So I can continue. So then, do you remember not like negation statements? So when you say something is true, then the value should be false. If you say false, the value should be true. Then that would be you doing this. So exclamation marks in um, JavaScript means negation. So if I say true, so if I say this is like saying not true. So if the value is true and this negation sign is here, then that will result to false. If I say not false, then the value here becomes true. So not true, false, not false, true. So this is negation, like opposite. When you put in true, the value is false. When you put in false, the value is true. So yeah. So if you guys follow up to this point, then means we can actually get past this place. So we've talked about this difference. Then we now go into conditional statements. So conditional statements are used to perform different actions based on the results of a comparison. So we have to use comparison, we have if statements, we have the if else statement, we have the else statement, and we have the switch statement. So we can use these statements to actually compare, like execute a line of code if something is true or something is false. So let me show you how that works. So I'm going to talk about if else switch statement. So let's continue. So an if statement is used to take an action if the result of a condition is true, or a result of the condition is true. So this is a structure, the basic structure of an if statement. So you have if, then you have the condition that you're putting inside these brackets, which the value of this condition would be um, when this condition is being evaluated, the value should be a boolean. So if this condition is true, then whatever I put in this block of code will work. So whatever I write here will work. So that's how an if statement is. So everything, the if else and else statement builds on this if statement. So if a condition is true, then this statement should run. So that's how it's being used. Then we have an else statement. So else statement is used with an if statement to take an action if the result of the condition is false. Then this is the structure of it. So this is like saying if this condition is true, then this block of code inside the if statement should run. Else, this else automatically says, this is like saying else, if the condition of this if statement is false, then this line of code should run. So before we go into using if else, let us like else if, sorry, let's understand how else and like if and else, how they work. Let's let me check. Oh, sorry. So sorry about that. So let me check. So I I say if now, remember we are checking for a statement. So can say if 5, or let me do this. Let day equals Monday, for example, and say if the day is equals if the day is equals to Monday, then we should have console.log So if we finish this and we run it, we see, yay, today is Monday. Why is that happening? Is because it is true that the day is equals to Monday. So if I change this to like Tuesday and I run it, we'll see today is not Monday. So this day is equals to, so we are checking if this day, which is this variable, if the value of this variable is Tuesday. So this is false. This evaluates to false. So since this evaluates to false, this condition doesn't run. Instead, this else block of code runs since this evaluates to false. But if this evaluates to true, then this particular line of code is going to run. So yeah, today is Monday only runs when this condition is true. So if I remove this if, for example, and I run it now, nothing is going to output on the screen because there is no else statement to run since this is false. But of course, if this is true, if this is Monday, yeah, it's Monday. You can evaluate whatever I want to evaluate here. Or you can check whatever condition you want to check inside here. You can check if 5 is greater than 2. Since that is true, it will tell you, yeah, it's Monday. Okay, that's true. But if I said is 5 is less, is 5 less than 2. So that is not true. So it won't do anything. But if I want it to actually say something when that condition is false, so I'll do this console.log. So so it's not true that this is not true. So that's why this line of code is running. But if this is true, like in this case, then we have that this particular line of code will now run. Oh, I hope that is interesting. I hope everybody's following that to that extent. Okay, so let's go over. So if we talk about if else if statements, so else if statements, although this is, so else if statement is used to create a new condition and take action if the result of the if condition is false. So although this is not the structure, so let me do it quickly here. So if I wanted to add another condition that is supposed to be met, then I could do else if, and I continue here. So I could now put another condition. Say if 5 is greater than 2, if 2 is less than 8, for example, we run it. Oh, okay. So sorry. So this is saying if this is this resolves to false, then let's check if this one resolves to true. If this one resolves to true, then this is what is going to be printed. If this resolves to false, then finally we can now print this one. So this else here will only run if everything here, if this else, if and else if is false. That's only when this else is going to run. But if this one is true, or any of the if else or else if you put here is true, then the else will not run. So the way this works is the first condition that is true, that conditions block of code will be printed out or will be shown, and then that ends it for um that particular set of if else conditions. So now we have that 2 is less than 8. We have, so this one is false, and since this one is true, this one runs, but this one doesn't run. So you can have more if else else if here. You can say else if you have another condition here. You can still have another else if and your condition, like that, like that, like that. You can have as much else ifs you want, but you can only have one if and one else for each statement. So this else if is like trying to extend your conditions. So a good application of this would be to check if okay, let's say, let me do this. Let user equals to user, for example, and I'll say is user, if user is equals to if user is equals to user. Here I could check if user is equals to if user is equals to uh admin. I could check if user is equals to vendor. I could check if user is equals to chef, for example. So so picture this being like a company, maybe a company, maybe an eatery or a very big restaurant that has a website. So we can compare if a user is actually an ordinary user, or we could, instead of even using user, we could have customer here. So customer. So so when you're coming to the website, you check if you're a user. We can now use this particular point, this particular line of code to send you to where you're supposed to maybe make an order for something. If you're an admin, then maybe it takes you to the admin dashboard and all this stuff. So you can say I'm a I'm a customer, and you can now say I'm an admin, and say I'm a vendor. Then here you say I'm a chef. So if we run this code now, you see I'm a customer showing there. If the user is an admin, see that I'm an admin comes out. If the person is a vendor, find out that I'm a vendor comes out. If the person is a chef, so I'm a chef. So, so, I'm not allowed here. So if we check if the person is a cultist, for example, if we check if the person is a cultist, to show that the person is not allowed here. So that's how you can use if, else, if, and else statements. So this person says, cultist, you won't collect. I beg, oh, I no one collect. All right, so that's definitely how to, you know, do this kind of thing. So else, if, else, if, else, if, else, if. You can have more else ifs. Then you have else when all this is not true. Then the else will now run. So yeah, Oluwatobi. uh, all right. So I hope everybody is following, because no, there's nobody here that wants to collect. So I hope everyone is following up to this point.
Yeah, following.
Okay, cool. Someone asked what operating system I'm using. So I'm using Zorin. Zorin. I'm using Zorin operating system. So, and I know a lot of people too ask what browser am I using. So I'm using Brave browser. So no. So Ubuntu, it's so we're already digressing a bit from our topic, but let me just talk about it. So Ubuntu is an operating system. It's also a Debian distribution. Ubuntu is a Linux operating system. So it's an operating system too. So that uses Linux kernel, and it's a Debian distribution. So if you want to learn more about like Linux operating system, different distribution of Linux operating system. So just Google different distributions of Ubuntu of Linux systems or Linux operating systems. You'll find out more. So Zorin, Parrot, Ubuntu, what else? Um, One other, I can't remember. There are a lot of operating systems that are under Debian distribution. So Zorin is one of them. And yeah, Manjaro too. And is Linux, I think, is Linux means Debian? I can't remember. So running Zorin means you're not actually even going to be using your commands are going to be different. Your extensions for your apps are going to be .deb, so it's going to be different. The way you install apps are going to be totally different from the way you install on Windows and the rest. So that's just by the way. So talking about operating system, so I use Zorin operating. So Zorin is also Linux based, a Linux based operating system. So which means its kernel runs on Linux. So that's by the way. So I've talked about this symbol. So I've talked about this symbol for and symbol. You have your or symbol and you have this not symbol. So I talked about switch statements. I remember I talked about I had talked about if else, and switch statements. So here we are, switch statements. Sorry. Switch statements. Yeah. So switch statement are used to perform actions based on different conditions. So this is the basic structure of a switch statement. So you have an expression here, and then you have case A, case B, and then you have a default here. So the action to be taken are inside these cases here. So let's see how that works. So we have switch and we have the expression. So let me still use that same scenario. So let's user equals customer, for example. We now say switch. So switch for user. And now say case when that user is customer. So we say console.log hello customer. Then we use break. I'm going to explain what this break does. So break doesn't allow the switch statement to continue checking for the condition again. It just, after checking for a particular case and that case is true, the break stops that switch statement from continuing. So we have break, we have case. So let me just copy this and paste. So if we copy this and we say if a customer is an, or if the user is an admin, so we say hello admin. If the person is a user, if the person is, so if the person is who else? The person is a
Event.
vendor. So then now have default break, case A, case B break. Then we have default of so if we run this for the customer to show you a hello customer, since the customer, if we use that for admin, say admin, hello admin. If we use it for vendor, says hello vendor. If we use it for artists, we see I no one collect. So now this, the difference between using switch statements and using if and else statements is that if and else, you can use if and else to compare a range of of um conditions. So let me show you what I mean. In fact, let me comment all that. So let's say let a equals to 25. So you can do this. You can do this using if statements. You can say if a is if a is less than 20 and a is uh and a is equals to 25, then we can console.log or if A is less than 20 and A is is equals to 25. Yeah. So you can do this. Hello, run that. If A is this or A is equal to 25. Okay, so we can do this here on a single line of code, right? But if you were supposed to do that same thing here, you split this into different lines. So you say if A is 20 in one of these case, then you should do something. Then now say or switch where the case is A is greater than 20, for example. Then you now do another switch case for this particular one. So so um so another way of another difference between these two is when you're using arrays, although we haven't gone into arrays first. So if we go into arrays, you see that you actually do a lot of things using if statements than using switch. Like personally, I don't really use these switch statements that much. I haven't even used it before to write, but it's important. It's important. So I'm not trying to say it's less important. It's just that you find less use case for it most times. So what a switch statement can do and if else statement can also achieve it. So that's the bottom line. So yeah, I guess you can do this using a switch statement too. So it's just putting this um so case. Okay. I think you can do maybe customer or maybe admin or all those kind of stuff. So you can do this basically on switch statements, but people prefer using if and else statements more than actually using switch statements. So that being said, I guess you all shall understand the difference or how they are being used. So switch just accepts switch accepts a variable or like a case, or sorry, an expression. So you can write your expression here. So this expression is like saying this value here. And now check if when that value, okay, a case where that value is equal to, or where your expression is equal to a case, then something should run. Else, if there is no case that fits this expression, the expression you put here, then the default is like an else statement, running an else statement. So the default will run if there is no case that suits or that is equal to the expression you put inside here. So I guess you guys follow up. You guys are following. Hello. So if there's anything you want me to explain, just say it on the comments. I'll go back and explain it. So uh so yeah. So I just want you guys to look a bit at the switch statement. So yeah, is a customer. If you're a customer, say hello customer admin. So these are different cases. Then so when once the person when once you reach here, it breaks out of here. So let's let's do something. Customer. and then we did continue. Okay, illegal continue statement, no surrounding iteration statements. Okay, continue is basically used when you're looping through something, when you're looping through. So you can't use it here. So you use break. But I guess if this break statement is not here, something should happen. Okay. So if I remove all the break statements, I guess you're picturing what will happen. So if I remove the break statements, it will run even when they are not true. It will run hello customer after customer. Then it will check for the break statements to leave the like to stop this from running. It doesn't see it. It will now run the rest. So hello admin, hello vendor, I no one collect, I beg. So that's the importance of that break statement. So after running, when that condition is true, it breaks out of this switch statement. So let's continue. So having said that, I believe you understand how Boolean works, how to use if statements, and how to use switch statements. So let's now talk about loops. So what are loops used for? So loops are used to repeat a block of code. So if you want, okay, let's say for example, I want to say hello great people, and I want to say that 20 times. So without using a loop, I'll have to paste that hello people 20 times and then try to print it. But that's simple because it's just 20. So what if I wanted to do, okay, let's take for example, um, you want to send a text message to all your contacts and you have like 2,000 contacts, or let's not even say 2,000, let's say 500 contacts. If you did it manually by sending them the text message one by one, by picking their numbers and then sending it one by one, it will take you a lot of time. But there's how you can write the message once and then you get that message to send to a lot of numbers at the same time. So what is happening at the background for you is those numbers are being looped on. So it picks the first numbers, your computer picks the first number, send the text message, picks the second number, send the text message till it exhausts the list of contacts you have. So what is responsible um, for picking each of those contacts and sending the messages is loop. So a for loop repeats a block of code until a stated condition results to false. So a basic loop structure looks like this. For an initializer, so an initializer is where the loop starts to loop through. So you can say, it should start to loop from 1 to a particular number. So this initializer is where you will now put that 1 as where it should start from. Then this condition is like what, this condition has to be true for this loop to continue running. When once this condition evaluates to false, this loop will not run again. It will break, it will stop. Then this iterator is how many times do you want like your initializer to be increased by. So if you want your initializer to increase by a certain number of times, then you put that number of times here as your iterator. So definitely I'm going to explain all these things to you. I know this might look a bit how should I put it? Maybe it might not be really clear to you guys, but it's not hard. So let's continue. So this is how I prefer to like look at a for loop. Each time I look at a for loop, I just think about this first statement being the start statement, this second statement being the stop statement, and then this third statement being the step, like how many, like the steps I would use to get to this stop statement. So example one. So wait, I guess you guys are still hearing me. Okay, you guys are still hearing me. All right, so CodeCamp said I should round up. So okay, so yeah, so let me just try to round up, like go through this stuff fast. So we have for I, so we said let I equals to 1, then I should stop when the value of I is less than 5. Then we are increasing I each time the loop runs by 1. So that's how we now get console.log I, so which I becomes, so the first time this loop runs, I is equals to 1. We print out I. We now check, is 1 less than 5? It is true. Or before we check that, we increase 1 by adding like 1 to it. We increment it by 1. Then we now check that, so this I now becomes 2. We now check, is 2 less than 5? That's true. 2 is less than 5. We now print out 2. We now increase 2 by 1. This becomes 3. We now check, is 3 less than 5? Yes, that's true. Till when we get to, is 5 less than 5? So that's false. 5 is not less than 5. So that's why it stops at 4 here. Then of course you can start looping from 0. So 0 to 5. So it will print out, but to print, if you count this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, it prints out 5 times, but it starts from 0. If you said let I equals to 1 and let this I here equals to like less than or equals to 5, then this would print from number 1 to 5. That's how for loop works. So then I'll go through them fast. Then while loop. So while loop loops through a block of code as long as the specified condition is true. So the structure of a while loop is this: while this condition is true, then this block of code should be executed. So for example, we said while. So while is a bit different. You have only the condition inside here as an argument, and then you have let I is equals to 0, and then we are printing out I here. Then inside the loop, as we are printing out I, we increase I by 1 here. So it still brings out this. Then we have do while loop. So do while loop will execute a block of code at least once before checking if the condition is true. Then if the condition is true, it will now continue executing that block of code. So if we did this, if we check, if we try to print this, it will at least print, it will print the number I is 0 first before checking if 0 is less than 10. Since 0 is less than 10, it will now continue printing these numbers. But if we check here, we said print this number if I is equals to 0, and then we now check, is 0 greater than 10? That's false. So at least it has printed the value once before trying to check if this value is true. So that's the difference between like while and do while. And then you can use while to do the same thing for does most times. So I talked about the difference between while and do while. So while checks if a condition is true before executing this block of code. While do while runs the block of code once before checking if the condition is true. So note, if the condition of a do while loop evaluates to false, then the block of code will have been executed once before the condition is checked. So thank you for attending the class for today. So I know I rushed a bit on for while and do while. So definitely in our next class, I'm going to like explain how loops work, and then we are going to look at objects and arrays. Okay, so someone is saying he or she came late. So Yeah, the link will be dropped. So I still need explanation on the difference between while and do while. Okay, cool. So I'm going to explain the difference more um, in our Wednesday class, Wednesday or Thursday. So in our next class, I'm going to explain the difference between the while and do while loop. And okay, so someone is talking about the switch statement. Okay, I'm also going to go through that in our next class.